الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله، يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول، يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله، اشفعي لنا. Imams would ask Allah through Fatima, يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا، يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها. الله يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله all together يا وجيه الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي يا ابن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا يا الله يا وجيها عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند يا وجيها يا وجيها يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها يا وجيها يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها ما شاء الله يا وجيها عند الله. All together. اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي يا ابن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله. Oh, no, not yet, not yet. يا وجيها. There's about 2-3 more imams. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها. يا أبا الحسن يا علي يا ابن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها. يا وجيها يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا يا صاحب الزمان يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا يا صاحب الزمان يا وجيها. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your hajat, and inshallah they're answered, and don't forget us in your du'as. Bismillah. يا سادتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله. صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين.
صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. صلى الله على زهراء صلى الله على زهراء صلى الله. Embodiment of purity, Lady of this house holy. صلى الله على زهراء صلى الله. Dearest Nabi, teased in the street, no son to make his line complete. He was called Avatar, Allah Kareem, so generous, his mercy flows magnanimous. He gave him Kauthar, a daughter who'd bear a line, purity she would define. He gave Fatima, a shining one, a guiding light, her torch of faith burning bright. He gave Zahra, sallallahu ala Zahra, sallallahu ala Zahra, sallallahu. My Fatima is part of me, he who harms her harms me. Said Rasulullah, but when he passed from dunya, what would become of Habiba? Afadalun Nisa, her rights usurped, Fadak stolen. She spoke the truth, who would listen? Oh Adila, when faced with such persecution, her faith was strong, such devotion. Oh Zahida, sallallahu ala Zahra, sallallahu ala Zahra, sallallahu. A role model for us timeless, not once did she ever transgress. Oh Salima, ideal wife without compare, a partner for our Mawla's prayer. Oh Saliha, a teacher for the women who were wondering what they should do. Oh Hakima, oh Hakima. Of her father, a reflection, perfect mother to her children. Ummul Abiha, Ummul Abiha. Sallallahu ala Zahra, sallallahu ala Zahra, sallallahu. When overworked in need of aid, she asked her father for a maid. Oh Rasulallah, he gave a gift more beautiful than any help available. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Remembering our Lord sublime, praising him 100 times. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Counting on string beads of clay, habit for us after we pray. Subhanallah, Subhanallah. Sallallahu ala Zahra, sallallahu ala Zahra, sallallahu. Embodiment of purity, lady of that house holy, sallallahu. Sallallahu, embodiment of purity, lady of that house holy, sallallahu. Salawat Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. First of all, on this Adim and Sa'adat Waladat of Sayyida Fatimah Zahra Salamu alayha, let me first of all send my tabrik and my mubarak and my congratulations to the Imam of our time, to the Maraji, and all of you beloved sisters and brothers in the Edmonton community, on this beautiful, beautiful celebration and this Adim night and this Ayam of Allah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your family and give us that tawfiq to tread the path of this woman of light, inshallah. I wanted to, first of all, in the beginning of tonight's discussion, spend a little bit of time on the greatness of Sayyida Fatima. And then I have a little bit of a discussion, inshallah, and you know, all of you in Edmonton know me now very well, maybe too well, that, you know, I don't go past half an hour, 35 minutes, especially on Jushin nights where there is no Masa'ib. And so, inshallah, you know, we'll keep it short, but inshallah there is a message that we always have to deliver, and we'll do our best to deliver that message. I think sometimes we take for granted, or maybe, you know, sometimes we don't truly understand the status of Sayyida Fatima. 14 ma'sumin, and if this was a class on theology and a class on isma, on infallibility, according to the Shia theology, you'd understand why these 14 are khas. Yes, there are prophets that were fallible. There were other people that were not imams, where we don't have anywhere in our books that they committed a sin. But these 14 are makhsus. They're khas. They're unique and they're special. And inshallah, one day, someday, we'll have a discussion. Maybe in the events of Rajab, we can talk a little bit about the theological proof of imamat and why as Shi'as we believe in the imams, but not tonight. 14 ma'sumin, of which there is one prophet, there are 12 imams, and there's one Sayyida Fatimah. Just that statement alone is unique. One can say that, look, it makes sense that the Prophet of Allah, being the Prophet of Allah, is infallible. It makes sense that the 12 imams, being the 12 imams, hold this unique status of being the 14. But Sayyida Fatima is not a prophet the way that we know prophets, nor is she an imam the way that we know the imams, and yet we see that she exists almost on the same level. She's a kuf, she's compatible, and a partner with the Holy Prophet. And she, has her name in history as a woman who was right beside the Holy Prophet. You pick up the story of Prophet Adam, and his story is incomplete without Bibi Hawa alayhi salam. You pick up the story of Prophet Ibrahim, and his story is incomplete without Hajara and Sarah. You talk about Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and his story is incomplete initially without his mother, without his sister Kulthum, and definitely without the wife of Fir'aun, ISIA. You pick up the story of Prophet Yusuf, for example, and it's incomplete without Zulaykha. And you pick up the story of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and yes, along with his wife Bibi Khadija, but is incomplete without Sayyida Fatima. I mentioned in my discussion on the days of Fatimiyya, when we were commemorating her shahadat, this laqab that she has of Abiha is one of the most beautiful ones I've ever heard. The Prophet of Allah says she was the mother of her father, meaning that she took care of him, stood beside him, was a partner with him. She was born into the 5th year of his prophethood in Mecca. And things were not very good for the Holy Prophet in Mecca. And, as many of you know, the journey by which the enemies tried to stop him and his mission is very clear in history. Of course, they first bribed the man, attempted to bribe the man, offered him anything he wanted. Government, women, money, fortune. They would go to Abu Talib, his uncle, say, look, tell your nephew that whatever he wants, we'll give him. Just stop spreading this mission of Islam. And that's where the very famous statement of the Holy Prophet says to Abu Talib that if they offered me the sun and the moon in my hands, I would, of course, continue on this mission. They then resorted to character assassination. And then, of course, those who said labbaik to the call of Rasulullah, his new, fresh companions and followers, they would torture them in the middle of the city as a lesson for everyone else who might even think about joining the ranks of the Holy Prophet in Islam. And by the 5th or 6th year in Mecca, halfway through his Meccan journey, things became very difficult. They referred to him as a sahir, as a magician. They referred to him as a majnoon, as a lunatic, na'udhu billah. And then they realized that, when some reports say when the sons that he had left this world, they referred to him as Abtar, Abtar, Abtar. The man whose lineage is cut is known as Abtar. And back there in Jahil Arabia, your lineage goes through your son. If you don't have a son, then your name doesn't move forward. The tribe's name is cut, everything. That's why sons were so revered and daughters were not revered back then. So they referred to him as Abtar. And then along comes the birth of Sayyida Fatima, the 20th of Jamad al-Akhir, the 5th year of Bi'athat after the Holy Prophet's announcement in Mecca. But the moment of her birth is incredible, only because Bibi Khadija, while she was alone at that moment in terms of giving birth to Sayyida Fatima, looked around now. Naturally, any woman who's about to give birth is a little bit anxious, maybe a little bit stressed, goes through anxiety, an immense amount of pain that as men we can never understand. Looks around and she doesn't have that support system that she needed. But lo and behold, now she begins now to notice a light now coming from the heavens now, arriving at her doorstep. There in front of her is Bibi Sarah. There in front of her is Bibi ISIA. There in front of her is Bibi Maryam. And there in front of her is the sister of Musa, Kulsum. All four of them there to witness the birth of Sayyida Fatima. And in this heavenly environment now, Sayyida Fatima was born, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala announces this beautiful birth of the Holy Prophet by saying, what? Inna a'ataynaka al-kawthar. We've given you Kawthar. Now Kawthar, obviously many of you know, is a pond in heaven, a source of water, a source of mercy in the heavens. But this Kawthar was a response to those who would ridicule the Holy Prophet in the streets of Mecca by saying, Abtar, Abtar. And in that area, in that time, in that Jahiliyyah era, where women were looked at, newborn daughters were looked at as a liability, the Quran says that the faces were turned black. They would turn their face away, these fathers-to-be, when they heard the news that they're going to have a daughter. At that moment now, for Allah, no one else now, nobody else but Allah now announces that his lineage, the prophets, my Habibs, my holy prophet, the seal of prophethood, his lineage will go through who? Go through a girl, go through Fatima al-Zahra salamullah alayha. Then that was something that was monumental and spoke of the azim status of Sayyida Fatima. The Prophet would say that if anyone wishes to please Allah, they must please Fatima. Anyone wishes to invoke the wrath of Allah, that will only happen when they invoke the wrath of Fatima. Her ridayat is Allah's ridayat. If she's radi with you, Allah is radi with you, content with you. These are found in Shia and Sunni books alike. So this is no ordinary individual in the history of Islam. And beside the Holy Prophet, of course, she was a pillar of strength. Later on, of course, being the first and lone defender of her husband, Amir al-Mu'mineen. One point I want to make, however, is this. She lived only 18 years. Every move of hers was calculated. And she showed in her 18 years the various beautiful dimensions of a woman. But when it was time for her to be at home and look after her kids and look after her family, she did that. But when it was time for her to leave the house and speak out and stand for justice, she did that as well. History says she left her house emphatically twice in her life. One for Fadak and one for Amir al-Mu'mineen. Meaning one for justice and one for the walayat and the imamat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Fadak to her was not a piece of land. Fadak to her was a symbol of the love of her father. But what upset her probably the most, some historians say, is that everyone's watching her gift given to her by her father taken from under her nose, and everyone was quiet. Delivered a khutbah that is monumental. I ask you, sometimes, unfortunately, we hear about the waladat of Sayyida Fatima. We hear about the shahadat of Sayyida Fatima. And right away, us men think, oh, these are days for women. Women should attend, women should listen, and it's a good opportunity for us to talk a little bit about women in Islam, for sure. But it's unfortunate that we believe that she was only for women. Absolutely not. The khutbah of Fadak, many of the ulama would say that we would force our students to memorize the khutbah. It's that important. Books have been written, volumes of books have been written by senior ulama, trying to write some commentary on this khutbah. Incredible, incredible words by this woman of light. And the only reason why I bring that up is because when I see sometimes the way our women are treated sometimes in our communities, in our families, in our homes, and sometimes when I see the way that some of our younger sisters have this image of Islam as a chauvinistic, misogynist, pro-male religion, number one, it upsets me. Number two is that when I do actually sometimes tackle these issues with individuals, and I remember I had given a lecture this past Muharram, in the last Muharram, in the first 10 days, and I got a pretty nasty email. And it happens. It happens a lot more than people think it does. There's a lot of hate mail sometimes that comes my way, and that's okay. It's all part of the package, and and we have to have thick skin, and that's fine. But the words that were used in that notes, referring to one lecture I gave on women, showed me that this sister, while she meant well, very passionate, mashallah, very passionate, and it was nice to see that much passion exists in such a young individual, but she was being fooled by sometimes the rhetoric and the propaganda of the haters of Islam. And sometimes when you speak about women and women's rights and women in Islam, we make two mistakes. When I say we, I mean all of us. The first mistake that we make is that we allow the actions of others, a deadbeat husband, a tyrant of a father, uncles and men in the family who just like to kind of keep the women imprisoned. We allow the actions of those ignorant, uneducated individuals we allow their actions to be used as a paintbrush to paint the rest of the deen. I've had women call me, verbatim tell me, that I have been abused in my marriage for 20, 25 years, Malana. I don't leave for the sake of my children. I don't leave for the sake of the hurmat and dignity of my husband and my family. It's an amazing sacrifice, and one that, frankly, sometimes I say you don't have to make. But then the frustration gets to a point where now she ends up telling me that it's your Islam, Malana. Look at the wording now. Your Islam that gives him the right to do what he's been doing to me for the past 20, 25 years. I simply say that's not true. It's not true. The birth of Fatima Zahra Salamu alayha, the mission of hers, the knowledge of hers, the way she's revered and talked about by the Imams. The Prophet would talk about her so much so that some of his wives would become very upset and jealous. So why do you keep talking about your daughter? It's unusual for a father to talk about his daughter the way you talk about your daughter. And he would say now very sternly, when I speak about Fatima, I'm reminded of the heavens and the skies. Such a loving, loving, loving father. There came a moment, and Atul Nasir Maqam Shirazi narrates this hadith in his book. That in the beginning they would refer to the Holy Prophet as O Muhammad, O Muhammad, O Muhammad. And the hukam comes down that you are to refer to him with respect by saying Ya Rasulullah, O Prophet of Allah. So when the Prophet of Allah now announces this wahi from Allah, now everyone begins to refer to him as Ya Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, even Fatima. So the Fatima now began to say Ya Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, to the point where the Prophet, now after 3 or 4 times of her calling him Ya Rasulullah, says, stop. This command was not meant for you, Fatima. Call me by that loving, endearing way that you call me, my dear father, my loving father. I mean, just the way that the narration is there, it warms my heart, Fatima, when you call me, oh dear father. This was a father who would stand up every time she entered the room. And this is not some sunnat of the Holy Prophet. Otherwise, it's not because that she was his daughter. Otherwise, it would become a standard sunnah that fathers have to stand up every time their daughter enters the room, and that's not the case. We don't have a wajib hukam, we don't have a sunnah, nothing. But this was not about simply a daughter and a father. This is about the Prophet of Allah and Sayyida Fatimah. The Prophet of Allah stood up for Sayyida Fatimah because of her maqam and her level. This is the respect at a time where they were burying daughters alive. The Prophet of Allah tried to say it, he tried to show it, tried to change the culture. So there's too much evidence in the deen, from the writings to the actions of the great ones, that tell us that the way that we should treat our women is something else. And I ask those sisters and those brothers that believe that, everything is male dominated. Even God is He in the Quran. All the prophets, men. All the imams, men. The maraji, men. I ask you please to learn Islam from Islam. Learn the deen from the deen. And don't allow those who have no business teaching you religion to teach you religion. Don't allow those people who don't have the alif bata of Islam to be a hujjat and a proof for you, just because they use fancy words, or because they're passionate, because they have X amount of followers. Let's be careful. The deen is perfect. And the deen is to be learned by the deen, not by the actions of those who follow the deen. I know it's easy enough to say. It's very hard to watch a man who looks like he's pious treat his women with disrespect and say, well, that's not Islam, that's him. It's very difficult to separate him from the deen, but I'm asking you tonight to do that. Be fair to that religion that worked very, very hard. That worked very, very hard to establish a sense of justice between the genders. Let me give you one example to bring my point home, inshallah, and then we'll move forward from there. It's an example I've given before and one that fits here. I want you to imagine that you go to a place that is breathtaking. Okay? Let's say, for example, those days I came to Edmonton a few years back, and I loved my time there with all of you, and it really was a beautiful time. And then I made my way to Calgary after that, and a lot of the mu'mineen there said, Milani, you have to bring your family here. We'll take you to Banff and Lake Louise, and beautiful places in your province. And let's say, for example, I come to Edmonton. You guys aren't sick of me yet, inshallah. So Zahir says, Said Asad, just, come down now. The pandemic is over. Everything is clear. I come down now, alhamdulillah, and I go. And, Zahir picks me up and says, let's go for a drive. And, I don't know how long it is from where the Jamaat is, but let's say he goes, let's go. I'll show you the mountains and the area. So he shows me. We get to a place now, and follow me, please. We get to a place now where there's mountains everywhere, and there's this beautiful, now clean water stream running down the mountain to the base of the mountain. And now there's a little bit of a river now flowing at the base between the mountains. On both sides of the water, there's homes. Beautiful little village. People live in those homes. Open the front door and you have this beautiful clean water stream that's coming from the stream in the spring from the mountaintop or halfway down the mountain. Just a breathtaking vision. I'm taking pictures, I'm taking selfies, blah, 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 this and that. I come home and I tell my wife all about it. Oh my God, you have to come and check this place out. It's heaven on earth. Next year now, I come and this time I go to hereby, I'm bringing my family with me. Malana, we'd be honored. Okay. And you gotta take me and my kids and my wife back to that same place you took me before. No problem, sure. Hop in a van this time, me, Zuhairba, and the family. And we go to the exact same place. But it looks nothing like I saw it a year ago. There's garbage inside the water. The water is black. There's things floating in the water. It looks run down. There's a nasty smell in the air. And my wife turns to me and says, you brought me from Toronto to Edmonton. They made me sit in the car for X amount of hours to show me this. I'm like, look, this wasn't like this last year. This was beautiful. This was amazing. This water, I could see my face in it. I could see through, I could drink the water. She says, so what happened? I go, I have no idea. And we're sitting there and all of a sudden what happens? The front door of one guy's house opens. He has his garbage can, dumps the garbage in the water, goes back inside. Now it makes sense to me. For years, for the whole year I was gone, all the residents of this area used this water as a landfill, as a dumping ground, as a garbage can. But I want my wife to experience the water at least that I experienced. So how do I do that? What do? I take her up the mountain. And I take her to that original source of water, where that water is gushing like a spring, the water that's going down and that was polluted at the base of the mountain. I said, look, let me show you what I'm talking about. Come with me. Let's go up the mountain. We go up the mountain now. There's water gushing, beautiful spring water, the smell, the taste, the look of it. You could drink it. I said, look, this is the water that I saw last year at the base of the mountain. This is the water. And she couldn't understand that that water down there, as disgusting as it was, at one point was this water, until what? I brought her to the source of the actual water. For years and years and years, my beloved sisters and brothers, my youth, my young ones, Islam has been dumped on. Everyone has their own opinion. People come in, they dump their ignorance, and people come in, they dump their quote-unquote expertise, and people come in now, they pretend to be some scholar or some expert or some researcher or some historian, make up all sorts of different hadiths about this person and that person, and dump their opinion and dump their ignorance and dump all this inside the deen, to the point where now someone like me brings that deen to a 19, 20-year-old, and they're like, look, you want me to believe in this? Bloodshed, oppression, war, right? Swearing at people's leaders, speaking ill of this person and that person, judging each other, calling each other out, backbiting, gossiping, all this. This is your Islam? This is what you are spending your whole life trying to call people towards? No, thank you. I'm good where I am. I go, look, this is not what Islam is. It's not what the deen is. This is not what, how do I show this youth, today's 18-year-old, that this is not what Islam is, what you see today? Yes, there's pockets of it sometimes. State of our homes, state of our community, state of the ummah at large is turning everybody off. How do I do it? How do I show them this is not what Islam is? Islam was something else. I do what I do with my wife. I took them right to the source. I take the youth right to the source. You have to go to the source of the deen, the Quran and the Ahlul Bayts. We believe in thaqalain, guys, in two heavy things, the Quran and the Imams and the Ahlul Bayt. And the Prophet says, if you hold on to both of them, not just one, both of them, you will not go astray. So my beloved youth out there, my sisters and brothers out there, my elders, my respective elders out there, I ask you very humbly that in light of the waladat of Sayyida Fatimah salamun alayha, learn Islam from Islam. Learn the deen from the deen. Don't allow individuals who have no clue what Islam is to taint your image of the deen. Don't allow shaitan to come and infiltrate your heart and mess up the vision you have of God. The deen is beautiful. Allahul Jameel wa yuhibbul Jamal. Allah is beautiful and He loves the beautiful ones. Let's recapture that beauty, all in the name of that lady of light, the lady of beauty, Sayyida Fatimah sallallahu alayha. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept this qaleel discussion, inshallah, and let's use these words. I will use my own words to now, inspire me to become a better believer, to not allow today's propaganda to affect my belief, to understand that if I want to know true Islam, to go to the source firsthand, to climb up the mountain and get that original source of water, inshallah. And finally, Allah, we ask you to please allow us to be worthy of the arrival of our Imam when he comes, inshallah. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi وبركاته.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أمين الله على وحيه الخاتم لما سبق والفاتح لما استقبل والمهيمن على ذلك كله. السلام على صاحب السكينة المدفون بالمدينة الرسول المسدد النبي الأمجد حبيب إله العالمين بالقاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. الصلاة والسلام على سيد ومولاي أمير المؤمنين وياسوب الدين وقائد الغر المحجلين. السلام عليك يا أسد الله الغالب أيها الإمام التقي علي بن أبي طالب ورحمة الله وبركاته. زيارة فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. السلام عليك يا بنت نبي الله. السلام عليك يا بنت حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا بنت خليل الله. السلام عليك يا بنت صفي الله. السلام عليك يا بنت أمين الله. السلام عليك يا بنت خير خلق الله. السلام عليك يا بنت أفضل أنبياء الله ورسله وملائكته. السلام عليك يا بنت خير البرية. السلام عليك يا سيدتي وسيدتي نساء العالمين من الأولين والآخرين. السلام عليك يا زوجة ولي الله وخير الخلق بعد رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أم الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام عليك أيتها الصديقة الشهيدة. السلام عليك أيتها الرضية المرضية. السلام عليك أيتها الفاضلة الزكية. السلام عليك أيتها الحوراء الإنسية. السلام عليك أيتها التقية النقية. السلام عليك أيتها المحدثة العليمة. السلام عليك أيتها المظلومة المغصوبة. السلام عليك أيتها المضطهدة المقهورة. السلام عليك يا فاطمة بنت رسول الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام على